Welcome, everyone, to Your Daily Writing Habit, episode number 1000.
Woo!
Yeah, I need like a marching band, but I don't have one. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book, but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, good afternoon, good whatever you're listening. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 20 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely considers themselves to be a writer into a published book author. Those three things, my pillars here on the show, are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And today, to help me celebrate episode number 1000 of Your Daily Writing Habit, I'm so excited to have here on the show my business buddy, Chris Brogan. And is that the right way? I mean, I really love alliteration. Are we business buddies?
I'll take whatever you were going to say. You could say I was like, your next door neighbor's cousin's friend. And I'd be like, probably also true.
Awesome. So business buddies it is, because alliteration. And also the fact that we're always in touch online. Chris and I first connected when he invited me to be a guest last year on his awesome podcast, The Backpack Show with Carrie Gorgone. And we've stayed in touch kind of ever since, mostly through Twitter, but also when I recently attended his 3 words for 2022 webinar, which is awesome. My 3 words, by the way, are conjure, direct, and rise.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful choices.
That webinar was very, very helpful. I just kind of stayed quiet uncharacteristically and listened to everybody else's words. And by the end, I had uncovered my own. So I'm very excited to have conjured Chris as a guest on my show today.
I hope to rise to the occasion.
Perfect. So here's more about Chris. Chris Brogan is the Chief of Staff at AppFire and an executive level strategist and CEO advisor, working with companies at the $100 million plus revenue range. Chris is a sought after keynote speaker and showrunner of The Backpack Show. He is the New York Times best-selling author of 9 books and counting, and he's working on his 10th, of course, because that's what authors do, right?
It's like people who have lots of cats. Once you have more than 2 cats, it's a problem. I think it's the same with books. Once you have more than 2 books, you're a problem. Like you're not a normal person.
Yeah, and I tell my authors, like, you're going to write 1 book or you're going to write 3 or more. 2 is weird. I don't know.
About nobody writes 2. I think you're right. I think
it's like the thing with 3s, which is also why I love your 3 words. It's not like 1 word for 2022 or 2 words. Like 3 just feels balanced to me.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So with all those things you do, Chris, how on earth, like if a random person says an elevator, so what do you do? How do you answer that in a phrase?
I mean, it's changed fairly recently. I only, took this chief of staff job at the very end of 2021. So when I say chief of staff at AppFire, they always go, "Oh, what's AppFire?" I go, "Well, it's an enterprise software company." I said, "Our stuff is snuck inside 55% of the Fortune 500 companies." What does a chief of staff do is I report directly to the CEO, and I help him make the best possible choices in his communications up to the board of directors and down to everybody else in the entire corporation. So I help execute the will of the CEO, but also communicate the intentions at every turn.
That is awesome. So like, what if the elevator ride is like super short? It's like 1 floor. Then what do you do?
Oh, I always just tell people I'm a typist.
That works.
I mean, I type. Look what I do all day. I tweet,
Yeah.
I type, I write a LinkedIn update, I write a book, I write a slide deck. So I'm a typist.
Yeah. It occurs to me, my 1-story elevator answer is I make stuff up for a living.
Oh, I like it. Well, that goes with my other job, which is, domestic combat helicopter pilot.
Okay. You definitely want to get in an elevator with people like us, everybody listening, because it's going to be a fun ride. So today, rather than chatting exclusively, we could probably just talk about books and writing and creativity forever. I want to talk about strategy for creatives, because that's one of the things that, obviously, speaking to your bio and your elevator pitch just now, that's one of the things that impresses me the most about you. I love your strategic mind, from your tweets to your weekly newsletter, which is one of my favorite newsletters to receive every week, by the way.
Thank you.
It is. And I'm going to put the links to all of this in the show notes. So I always tell everybody, listen to the, check out the show notes, but definitely there's going to be some good stuff. But yeah, I love your newsletter. Always makes me think.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk strategy. And so yesterday's episode, by the time everybody's listening now, of Your Daily Writing Habit, I kind of rolled out something that I just made up recently called, I'm calling it a SWOS analysis for authors. I'm going to see. So for those of you who are just listening only to the show, you're definitely going to also check the show notes for a link to my YouTube channel, because this next part of the conversation will make a heck of a lot more sense if you're watching the interview. I'm going to see if I can. I've never shared a screen during a podcast interview, so this is a first, just for you, Chris.
Well, I have faith.
There we go. So I made up a thing where I replaced threats with, and I don't even know if this is the same order they do it in a SWOT analysis in business, but I replaced threats with stories because I kind of have an optimistic Pollyanna type personality. And I want to make sure it's still, I guess it's still recording too. Yeah, this little red light. Literally, I've never tried to record and share a screen at the same time. So this is very interesting. And the reason that I replaced threats with stories, not just to be optimistic Pollyanna, is because in my experience, authors and creatives were sometimes more adept at handling threats based on the lessons we've learned from our own life stories and the stories of others, versus trying to like guess which threats are coming our way. I've never been very good at forecasting threats, and I know that makes me a very bad business person, but you know, I think when we start trying to predict, maybe we can get paralyzed in worry from obstacles and worrying about things that may or may not happen. So I have this thing about stories. And then I was also thinking a few minutes ago about like, this probably happened like in cave people times, because that was the best way to learn. Like if, you know, a caveman came back into the cave and he was all mauled and beat up from some like large animal while he was out hunting, and told the story of like how that happened, the other cavemen are like, so I'm not going to do that tomorrow. Great way to identify threats, right? So that's why I did that. And so before we get into my kind of made up SWOS thing, which is now I don't know if I like the acronym, so very much beta, very much idea in progress. I want to know, Chris, what is your experience with the traditional SWOT analysis in business, pros or cons and stories? And I'm going to stop sharing this now.
So the SWOT analysis that people use in business, I've always been I'm always wary about like strategy tools a lot of time, because I find that there's a lot of them that they have their pluses and their minuses. And it almost goes right to the very famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I think that the minute we start looking at, you know, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, the minute the bear turns the corner, you're like, throw that at the floor and run. That's what SWOT is, you know, and you run. There are other strategies, like according to the military, like the most successful strategy ever was this thing called the OODA loop, which was observe, like see what's going on, orient, like kind of align yourself to what's going on, decide, make a decision on what you're going to do, and then act. And then you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And that was supposedly the most regenerative and successful strategy system that you could ever use. But what I like about what your SWOS analysis says, and what I like about the idea of removing threats and putting stories is, for writers, it's most definitely the last thing every time you should be thinking about is there a story in this? Is there a story in this? Is there a story in this? And I'll give you an example. I was watching an interview the other day between Jamie Foxx and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And one of the things that came up during the interview is sort of like Jamie made a point that The Rock was in a lot of movies that were not especially super heavy or super deep or whatever. He was sort of teasing him about that. But he was also saying, you know, it's not like, I never see you like really working your guts out in front of a camera. And The Rock said, no, because I'm in it for the entertainment and I want to entertain people. He goes, I have ways to work out my guts, and I have a therapist for that. And I thought that really, really lays out who The Rock is. He wants to entertain. And so every one of his stories is going to kind of begin and end with the mindset, are you not entertained? To quote Gladiator. So I think when I got that story in my head about that's what the Rock thinks about, I sort of snip both sides of that story and think, I'm going to use this somewhere. And this becomes a nugget. And so we writers, we're always shoveling these into the pack. So the strength of that story is it's a really fast way to explain the difference between an entertainer and someone who's writing from some other motivation. And then the weakness is, the backstory. Is it worth that much backstory to make a relatively simple point? Maybe not. Depends how much space I have to write.
Mhm.
The opportunity, you're going to listen a little closer because I mentioned The Rock and I mentioned Jamie Foxx. You're like, oh, celebrities. So you
Yeah.
pay a little more attention.
Yeah.
And then the stories is just, I can sum that into a simple story package and I can walk around with it. So I like your SWOT analysis because it ends on that concept of, now that I've spent the time and effort thinking about this, what am I going to do with it? Because if you're not doing something, and then, this is a moment where like a good chunk of people listen to you are going to stab me through the earphones. I hate journaling for journaling's sake. I have nothing to do with people's morning pages and all that. I think it's a waste of time if you're just writing for no real reason. That is my opinion. I will die on my cross for it. I think it's wasteful. I journal every day productively, to kind of remember where I've been, what I've been doing professionally, ideas I want to use for writing, but I never just write la, 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 because I'm supposed to fill 3 pages.
Yeah.
So anyway, there we go. I'll shut up. That's what I think of.
That works perfectly for my show, by the way, and for my audience, especially my regulars, because they know I'm very action oriented, very task oriented. So when I'm talking about journaling, I rarely am journaling for the sake of journaling. I'm giving questions. I'm a big fan of, like, for my fiction authors, like character journaling, like really journaling with like some sort of intent. Like, what is the purpose of the journaling? I mean, I've talked once, I think, about freestyle stream of consciousness journaling. That's just kind of like Drano, where if you're just like totally blocked and there's no words coming out, Drano, freestyle stream of consciousness journaling. But yeah, the morning page, God bless the people to do that. But it's just like, I need to be like journaling. Like when I'm journaling, I'll put like a question at the top and then just explore that question. I have to have like, what am I doing here? So I agree with you. Yeah. And I like that story a lot because, and here's another great reason. And I'm glad you like my SWOT analysis that I just made up earlier. And I love that story that you told about The Rock because, and this is just really one of the great, most multifaceted things about story, as you know, you can get a million lessons from that. The whole time you were telling the story, I was just thinking about like, that's so cool that The Rock knows who he is that well. He has like that much clarity on his identity, his brand. And you can carry it over to authors where it's like, you ask like a romance authors, why don't you ever write a horror novel? Because I'm Danielle Steele. Like, why are you asking me to be Stephen King? And it's really great to have that kind of clarity on your work. So I love that about stories and there's probably 10 other different lessons depending on how you look at that story.
It's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that Stephen King wrote romance and Stephen King wrote, his best attempt at true crime and all that. So he didn't listen to Danielle Steele. He just said, whatever.
Yeah, my little made up story about Danielle Steele. I don't think anybody's ever asked her why she didn't write a horror movie.
Oh, I thought it was totally real. I believe you. What are you, some kind of writer?
Yeah. So it's funny. All right. So let's see. We talked about SWOS and SWOT and all the things. So moving on to the next thing I want to chat with you about. First of all, I assume we seem to read the same books. Have you read Think Again, the Adam Grant book?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I like that man, Adam. He and I were at 2 or 3 events once a couple of 3 years ago, and I got to hang out with him backstage, so to speak, 2 or 3 times in like short order, which I think really changes how people react and interact with you. And he's a super thoughtful kind of person, very cerebral. Okay. You get that sense when you're walking around with him because his head doesn't move very much. It's very like preserved.
It doesn't move. Is that how you can tell a very cerebral person?
Really smart people don't wiggle their head like a pop-up doll or whatever, or a bobblehead. And I do. Like, the kind of people who like smash their heads into things and stuff, they're not exactly, the wizards of the room. That's me.
So aware now of everything my head's doing. So like Frankenstein was like a genius because he didn't move his head, right?
Right. The monster was deep thoughts all the time.
That's awesome. I can tell that Adam Grant is very cerebral just from reading his book. And it's just so funny just reading his book about, rethinking. Highly recommend reading this book for everybody listening who hasn't read it yet. I just think of my grandfather was actually a really successful businessman and entrepreneur. I come from a very family, successful family of entrepreneurs and business people. Now all I'm thinking about is what my head is doing. Okay. And all I'm thinking about when I'm reading Adam Grant's book about, and just, the power of rethinking and questioning your own beliefs and, just how incredibly like liberating and joyful it can be to change your mind. This has been my life philosophy and I'm trying to remember why. And I finally remembered reading his book. I'm like, oh my God, one of my grandfather's favorite adages was only a dummy doesn't change his mind. So
that's pretty accurate. I like that statement too. Only a dummy doesn't change his mind. And usually, mostly dummies get people's hands stuck up their butts. But that's not only a dummy.
That's like a whole different conversation, but
that is. That's
yeah,
for a different podcast. I'm on the wrong show.
There we go. Well, I think this is why, this is why Think Again is speaking to me, because I just realized a few chapters in, I'm like, this sounds really familiar. And then I like heard my grandfather's voice in my head. I'm like, oh, I've been hearing this my whole life. So I'm already ahead of everybody else reading the book.
But it's really true, Christine, that there are ways to think about things, and there are ways that humans cluster around people who we feel have identical ways of seeing things, right? So we might, I tend to hang around with people who are a lot more entrepreneurial minded than people who work for the weekend, so to speak, because, I don't even know. I have my first real day job in I don't know how long, since 2009, I guess. And I don't remember what it's like to think, oh boy, it's Friday. That's not been a thing of mine for 1,000 years. And so I feel like when you read Adam Grant, when you see that connection with your grandparents and, others in your lineage, you go, oh yeah, well, these are my people. I mean, language beyond understanding the actual words, but the intentions and the systems and the flows and the things we value and the things we represent and the things we see, I think are all, cues into where we should be spending our time. So we spend a lot more of our language execution and consumption tribalizing and categorizing. Are we, aren't we? Are we, aren't we? I'm the type of person who is how we kind of experience the world. That's our tongue sticking out to find the different flavors.
That's really cool. And I was just thinking also like the rethinking thing, it goes with the SWOT analysis pretty well, because to be able to do that analysis, to look at your stories and look at your strengths and your weaknesses and opportunities, yeah, you need to kind of, it's like not believe the things that you thought you believed a second ago and kind of see like what's outside the wire fence.
Yeah, good old George Lucas from the movie Willow. Forget all you know or all you thought you knew.
Yeah, I think I've seen that memorialized on sitcoms in like funny moments of like done, like just because they didn't know anything. Oh my goodness. So what role has rethinking, well, you just talked about how rethinking is playing a role in your new quote unquote day job now, but what other ways has rethinking played out before now in your life and career?
I'll give you a fiction example. One of my favorite books ever was Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Now, I'll put a little disclaimer. He's got some politics that I don't agree with. I'm not talking about that. Just the idea of the science fiction story, Ender's Game, I thought was really cool. Well, there's another one called Ender's Shadow, which is the whole story of Ender's Game told from another character in that world's point of view. It's this character named Bean. So Ender's Game is about Ender, this little guy, and the third born in a family in this sort of future where you can't have third children. It's not allowed. It's, it's a bad thing. 2 is the limit.
That's so weird. We started our conversation of 2 and 3 earlier. Okay.
Well, there you go. So the Ender's Game is told from this whole perspective of Ender's family and Ender's mindset and his point of view. And then Ender's Shadow comes all the way back around and tells the whole story again from this other point of view. I think through that rethinking, you get a really interesting way of seeing the universe, because the reason I recommend the book Ender's Game to business people to read is the whole idea of the book is changing perspective and point of view. They're basically like kind of like a military training camp. And one of the games they're playing, Ender realizes that even though the space seems to orient based on the hallway that you were just walking through. Because there's no gravity, you can change orientation however you want because there's no gravity. And so the thing he comes up with, this seminal quote throughout the book, is that the enemy's gate is down. Like, let's turn everything around in our minds so that whenever we see the enemy's gate, we'll just use that identity as down. And so it teaches you that there's more than one way to look at things. So between that and Ender's Shadow, you get another whole perspective on you. There's so many ways to look at something. And I think that is a massive selling point to human growth, is that when you can only see one way, you're just never going to be as successful unless you're at a very limited job. If there's only one way to make nails that are good for house building, great. But almost every other thing in the universe, it's great if we have a couple different ways to do it.
I see that just kind of helping people plot out their books. Whenever, that's one of the things I do. People come to me with a, either partially formed or not formed at all. Like, I have an idea for a book, and I don't just say, this is the way we're going to write your book. It's just like, all right, here's a few different ways, and we talk it out. And that's like the most fun part about books, is like, there's 10 different ways we could write this memoir. How exciting.
Absolutely. And I just went through this. I'm working on this business book, and it's about this company that I've joined, Appfire. And I was saying to the CEO today, I said, there are so many ways not to write this book. There are so many ways that this could go horribly wrong. There's so many failed business books. Yeah. Nobody cares. Until like you're a very well-known company, no one cares. So here's one way that we can approach writing this book that would make people want to see how it goes. And I lined up sort of my mindset, and thank goodness he was really into it, because I had spent 5 or 6 months writing so far where I felt very smashed against the wall, because I felt like no one's going to read this book. Like, I'm writing for nothing right now because it's just not the kind of book that people read. So I said, well, I've got to find a kind of book that people will read, because this task is not going away. So unless I, give up and give it to someone else, I got to produce a book. And so that's how I did it, based on your premise.
That's awesome. Because you just think about all the books. I'm just thinking of the book that I probably quote the most, just being the habitsologist for authors, that I like to call myself. That would be my short elevator speech. I'm a habitsologist for authors. Obviously Atomic Habits by James Clear. And you just think of all the habits books that existed before and around and since that book. Why that book? And I have theories on that. And I also enjoyed another book called The Slight Edge. But just, you look at Atomic Habits and like, that's the habits book. And what was the number one book on Amazon last year? I think he said in a tweet.
Sure.
So do you have theories on why that habits book? Now we'll just kind of go in that direction now.
I do. And I'll take nothing away from James. I've known James for years as well. Yeah. I'll take nothing away from him, but I will say that we humans love to feel wrong. We love to feel bad. We love to feel inadequate. And so if there's a book that says, in this book are the things that'll make you more complete, you will buy the hell out of that book. Just like George Carlin had those jokes a long, long time back about the entire fashion and beauty industry is based on one really simple idea. You stink. You're smelly. You need to buy things to make you less smelly or differently scented. Boy, do you stink. And I think this is the same with habits. I think Clear's book, or every diet book in the world, is essentially the same. Hey, fatso, change what you're doing. Like, clearly that's not working out. Yeah. I always make the joke about people. I said, do you have a pedometer on? And they always say yes. I said, great. Don't take it off until you're skinny. That's the number. Not 10,000 steps. Leave it on until you're skinny. Have a nice day. Right? Because, like, who wears pedometers? Fat people. What's his face? The fastest running guy in the world guy. He's not out there. Like, no one's telling him, okay, that's enough running for today. Right? Like, you get your 10,000 and good job, buddy. Yeah. So I think that with habits books, we're waiting for someone to tell us that we're bad and wrong. And I again, no negative to James. It's a beautiful book. Yeah. I just think you can't not sell a book that says, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. And I mean, I love that I mean, just it sounds like totally cliche, but he makes it doable. I think there maybe were habits books that were so complex and so complicated and so just do the habit, like lots of rah and motivation or whatever. He's just kind of, my favorite thing with him is the one vote. So it's just like, did you do a thing today? Good. That's one vote in favor of doing the things. You just got to tip the balance and tip the scales so that eventually you have more votes in favor of doing the thing versus not doing the thing. Like there's just something, the way that he makes it measurable and doable versus just like raw habits, you can do it, yay, go, because that obviously didn't work.
He's done a great job. And Chip and Dan Heath had a swell book on it. Trying to think of what's his other name too. Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit.
Okay. Yeah.
There's just so many of these books, but all good people, all wonderful concepts, all great topics. But I started, you and I are recording episode 1000.
Yeah.
We're recording episode 1000,
Band.
at the start of a year. And, I keep seeing so many people running around trying to, figure out their misgivings and shortcomings. And I said, maybe this year we just start off as if, holy crap, are we great? Like, we're so good. We're so ready to go. We are so equipped. And then see what happens. Maybe it'll be different.
Yeah, I like to look at my strengths and make them better. Because my weakness is like, I'm never going to get really good at parallel parking or cooking. Or I can list my weaknesses, but like, what am I going to do? If I'm just at the level of functional, then we're fine. But I'd rather focus on the strengths. And I had another thought and I don't know what it was. Oh yeah, habits. I knew, my favorite word. And this is why, like for the show here, and this is why I only have a 3 to 5 minute for those of you listening for the first time, maybe Chris Brogan's fans who are listening to my show, welcome. Why I only do 3 to 5 minutes every day. And unlike, other than my interview episodes like this one, everything is short and actionable, and the whole idea, and I'm so pleased because my fans and listeners have told me this is exactly what they do. They're able to listen to the show 3 to 5 minutes every morning and then say, okay, now I have something I can use to go write my book. And then they go write their book. So they use this as the kind of habit stacking trigger to go write their book. And that's exactly how I designed the show. I didn't design it to be rah habits. Let me talk to you about habits for 45 minutes or anything like that. It's like, here, do this thing, write your book, go. And that's what they do.
Every author I know, every aspiring author I know, buys 10 or more writing books. And some of us, if we've been around at it for years, then suddenly we have 100 or more writing books because they multiply.
Yeah.
But the one above all for me ever was Stephen King's On Writing.
Yeah.
That was probably, I was just trying to think, is there any other book that gave me any better advice? And the real advice out of that whole book, which I love, I always tell people buy it. And if you're a huge Stephen King fan, read it all. If you're not, rip it right in half at the very beginning. And then I say, or if you don't want to read the book at all, here's what the book says: shut up and just write. Just write, you stupid idiot. And that's what the book's advice was. And I think that that book did more for me. I didn't throw away. I gave away all of my writing books when I bought On Writing, because its advice was just write. I went, oh, okay.
You need cool stories in there too. But yeah, that was one of the first ones. I like different writing books for different reasons. It's really confusing because his is On Writing, a memoir of the craft. And then there's also William Zinser's book, On Writing, which is a really, really great writing. By the way, one of the best writing fundamentals books I've read, and I've quoted on the show here a bunch of times, William Zinser's On Writing, but people get them confused. Like, look at the power of a subtitle. So that was good. And then I like The War of Art because it's one page and it's battle themed and go to war with myself. So I enjoyed that too. It just depends on, like all my favorite writing books have a different purpose. And then my favorite actionable one, and a lot of my book authors find it confusing because it's ostensibly about screenwriting, is Story by Robert McKee. Because for me, that's you really need to be working on a project when you read that book, because it's so freaking actionable that, it's just, and it's so nitty gritty. So you have to be like really, really committed to the art of writing and being, doing a project to get through Story. And when you're done, you can kind of kill someone with it because it's very heavy.
Good gosh, we read all the same books.
Shocking.
Yeah, I think it's should be illegal in some worlds. But I think that the truth behind that, or, you know, the way I would like to characterize the truth behind that is I just think that there are two types of people who read those books. There's people who are ready to execute, and the book's gonna glance into that sort of feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm on the right path. And then there are people who aren't ready, and they're gonna go, that feels like miles away, and I don't think I can do that. And I don't know. Maybe it's a litmus test. Maybe every now and again you go back and you try to read those books, and if you still don't think you're an author, then you're probably still not an author, um, until you write a whole bunch, and then you're accidentally an author again. So I don't know. I think that's why someone like, I think your process and you're helping people is very useful, because it's way better than my advice, which is just don't. Like, your life would be so much better if you weren't an author. Like, it is not a fun job. You sit, you know, it's very quiet. You have to not talk to people if you can help it. And it's very, I think the only people that really should have a future as an author are the people who 5 minutes after the argument have the perfect comeback. And the rest of us are all just idiots, and we shouldn't be authors.
We're just bobbling our heads around, trying to figure out life. I mean, I think like all the books that we talked about, I mean, any good, like the sign of a good tool or a resource, which is what a book is supposed to be, I think it should make someone, bring them to a crossroads and make them make a decision. So like a good book about writing, hopefully I try to do this on the show too, where I really don't pull any punches. I'm very honest, and I'm just like, yes, writing a book is hard. Let me just start there. I'm not the like, everyone can write a book. I'm not that person, as you can probably guess, as a book coach at all. Like if people get to the end of my show and just say, you know, the end of one episode, or a lot of people binge listen, which is really cool. And this has actually happened before. People have emailed me like, okay, I've listened to like 50 episodes of your show, and now I'm scared. They realize like, oh, writing a book is hard. Good. Yes, hard, but doable. You just need the right resources. And this is why I broke it down to my pillars, the writing fundamentals and productivity and mindset habits. You need the whole triangle there. But yeah, writing a book is hard. And if people are just telling you, you can write your book in a month, it's super fun and easy, and you're going to change lives. Yeah, no, well, if that was that easy, then every single person on the planet, which it kind of seems like sometimes everybody has a book, but then literally everybody would write a book.
People who have given you that advice, by the way, hate you. They hate you, and they want you to fail. I hope you realize that, and you can go back and go, Ma, you got to understand, Chris Brogan just told me that you hate me. It's utterly true, because if you could write a book, you could get a really terrible disease. Writing is, you know, it is not, you don't wish that on people. Writing is something you have to do. And it's not, I don't know. No, you know, if there's some great cosmic world out there handing out like parts for the school play of life, writer is the crappiest one. Writer is the worst one. Well, I don't know, there's like 5 worse ones, I guess, but it's pretty bad.
I learned that working in Hollywood, like on sets, like, yeah, the screenwriter, that's not the happy, popular person. Even I know of A-list screenwriter, not a happy guy.
Shoveling elephant poop, I was thinking maybe that's worse than writing, but
yeah,
maybe not.
I saw elephant poop shoveled in front of me once. That's a whole different story here.
What's weird is I was at the IRS.
Yeah, I wasn't actually at a circus. There's a whole other conversation right there. I don't do those kind of circuses. So I had another thought, but I don't know what it was. So let's talk about your 3 words, because that's what, I don't know, is this what you're famous for? It is, you're famous for that for me. I've never done the 3 words until this year. So do you want to, as Carrie said on your the words episode of the Backpack Show, do you want to indoctrinate people really quickly about that?
So starting in 2006, I had this concept that instead of a resolution, which I read that 56% of statistics are made up. I read that 84% of people never get their resolution past the 19th day of January. So you're like, I'm going to drink 8 glasses of water. Happy January 19th. You stopped. Right. And so I thought, well, that's sad. And then everyone has kind of like, you know, this is my word I'll focus on for the year. And I thought, I'm going to do 3. Now there's a few reasons. Christine and I already said, look, 3 is a great number. It's a magic number, I've been told. And so 3 is useful because you could triangulate from it. You could have sort of a left and right and up and down and a depth. It's an X, Y, and Z axis. I came up with the idea, if you had 3 words to sort of guide your life and the actions you're intending to take, this might be how it works. So I now say to people, my 3 words is select 3 words, 3 meaningful words that align your actions to attempt to make your goals, to meet your goals over the coming year. So write 3 meaningful words that align your actions to establish your goals over a year. 3 meaningful, so that people don't add words like the, back the bomb, for people who like to support the bomb. I don't know. Something with a the in the middle means you've already wasted a word.
Yeah, we don't do that.
I tell people no alliteration, that's for going to the hardware store and getting those live, laugh, love plaques and putting them in your kitchen. But sometimes people have alliteration and it works fine for them. I've had it certain years.
Yeah.
Now the 3 words, like 2006, my words were ask, do, and share. Ask a lot of questions, ask a lot of people for help, ask in any way I can think of. The word ask is how I used it. Do was very much the Yoda thing. Do or do not, there is no try, just do. Because we procrastinate so much. Oh, I don't know, maybe I'm not ready. I just did. And if I failed, I failed. And so that was big. And then share was, no matter what happened, keep sharing the output. Oh man, I tried this experiment. Ooh, did I fail? And I would share. And that's another thing about writers. If you're using your tools, you should be out there sharing as often as you can. So that was 2006, very successful. 2007, I got clever, tried to make 4 words. Nope, failed. 2008, I think it was, I tried for a different kind of 3 words, and I was not as, I tried to be super clever with them and I failed. 2009 was one of my best years ever. Great, easy words. So 2022, I picked 3 words. My first is scout. And I tend to tell people use use verb words more often.
Yeah.
Make an action, not a statement. But I needed a noun word because I kind of wanted to identify in a different way. And so I wanted to be a scout, someone who scouts ahead of the main troops, someone whose job isn't to do everything, but is to kind of get the lay of the land and bring it back. And so that reminds me, I don't have to do everything. I just have to scout, bring back my report, and then we take action based on it. I don't have to solve it even. I just have to report it. And so that's scout.
But it's both. It's a verb and a noun. So,
Well, and I used this in a scout is a verb as well. I was corrected on that really quickly in my post because I was like, I'm using a noun, and they're like, it's a verb. I was like, it's both.
Dual purpose. Yeah.
I'll fight you.
Yeah.
But next word I used was co-create, which is just as simple as it sounds. How can Christina and I co-create a meaningful episode for you? There you go. Mm-hmm. And then the third is a word, barely, called pluses. And it reminds me to seek the pluses. I'm working really, really, really hard on overhauling my life to be extremely positive all the time. And I don't mean that in that super squeaky, happy, barky way, but I do mean it as, I'm heading towards something. I get told that they're not even here till tomorrow. Okay, got it. Psh, move right to the next thing. Like spend no calories on any roadblocks I hit. Just keep looking for, is there another plus? Is there some other thing I could be doing then? Okay. Someone said, hey, you want to go on a date tonight? Well, excellent. Thank you so much. Good talking to you. Sorry, we're not going on a date. Woo. And you just keep moving, right? So look for the pluses. So those are my 3 words. And I guide people as best I can and encourage people to come up with their 3 words every year. And so I know this might be the first time you gave that a go. I'm curious to how your experience was giving it a try.
It was. I mean, the webinar really helped listening to everybody's, and, being the actionable person that I am, like verb, I was just like, oh yeah, like 100%. All my 3 words are going to be verbs. They're going to be actionable. They're going to be, if I could make them measurable, I would. My rise is very kind of similar because like one of my definitions of rise is like rise above the noise, rise above the negativity. I have like a few slants on that, but that's definitely one of that. I like the pluses.
Great.
I don't leave the house without a book and a notebook because there's no lag time in my life. It's just like, if there's a way, I'm like the least angry person waiting in line you'll ever meet, or waiting in a lobby, because it's just like, I just finished 4 chapters. I don't know why y'all are upset about stuff. Just bring a book and notebook with you. There's no lag time in life. So I like those. And I had fun coming up with it. Oh, believe me, I came up with tons of them during the course of the webinar, writing in the notebook. But then by the end, I had these. And now, of course, I really key in on people that haven't done your process, that are not familiar with you. So the people all over my, Facebook feed that are posting their word of the year. And I saw one today, happy. And I don't know what to do with that.
Right. What are you going to do with that word? It's, I have,
It's an emotion.
I have spent a lot of my calories in the last 4 or 5 days not correcting people and just saying, that sounds great to everybody.
Yeah.
What I want to do is like, let's really talk about this for a minute. Like, what does that even mean? Because what I want the words to do is sort of to your no lag time, right? If you're sitting at the grocery store and you get a text that says, that the meeting that you were really eagerly anticipating just canceled on you last minute, what I want you to know is like, do any of those 3 words inspire a particular response to that moment? Like, is there an action that you're going to take right now that's based on any of those 3 words? So in my case, pluses would have me say, yeah, all right, well, I'm fine that meeting's canceled. I was really looking forward to it. I'm going to pick it up another time. Great, no worries. I'm just going to pick up the next thing. That's what mine would tell me to do. If your 3 words can't tell you what to do, then they're probably not really 3 words. They're probably sort of like states of being, like you said, or an emotion or something like that. That's not going to help, I don't think.
Yeah. Mine would be direct, because I would direct how I'm going to invest my time next. That's a lot of time. So that was an easy answer. Hey, my words just passed the test, the word test. Okay. All right. So we have to talk about habits, this being the habits show. Which habits have served you best throughout your career?
Stephen Pressfield and I kind of got in an argument early on. And you're not supposed to do that with people that you really idolize. Like, it's probably not a good way to but I have a sort of internal jump and choke people thing about things like the Muse. Yeah. And he loves the Muse.
I could see that about you.
So I said, well, let's fight. And we started because I wanted to see if he would fight. But he's like so much better. And he goes, well, no, but he goes, the Muse doesn't just show up for anybody. It shows up for someone who works. And I said, oh, so it's like a working person's Muse? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, we can still be friends. Which is, by the way, all of Marvel and DC comics in the 60s through 80s had this scene where 2 superheroes didn't know they were both heroes, and then they fought. And then they were like, wait, we can get along, and they'd be friends. It was like the worst introduction of every superhero, like for 20 plus years. So with Pressfield, the habit of he said about the Muse. So I have spent my life fighting everything that people give for advice about right at the same time of day, right in the same tool, right in the same position, or whatever, use the same music. Like, I always make it so that I should never be beholden to a particular technology, a particular time of day, a particular anything, because I basically wanted to build an excuse removal system, which is, I guess, almost the opposite of habits, right? What's the opposite of a habit? It's an excuse. So I wanted to make an excuse removal system for what would make me say to someone, I didn't get my words in today. And if the answer was something stupid like, well, I didn't have internet access all day and my writing's only up on the internet, that would be an excuse. So I write in tools like Evernote or like Google Docs, where you can have the offline mode so I can have the doc open. I write in any kind of a tool that I can use with or without my own device, as long as I have web access. Or those weird tubes full of ink or graphite or whatever, those I guess work.
I mean, if this is all I had, I would write a book on Post-its.
Right.
See,
who is it? William Carlos Williams used to write poems on prescription pads. And I think it was Bukowski and Dickens and a lot of other people used to use office supplies to write their stories. And I think that's, the Mandalorian kind of answer, this is the way, like, write on everything that you can possibly get your hands on, and it shouldn't impact your forward motion.
Yeah. Cool. So any habits you're working on for this year?
Positivity, boy, am I
Yeah.
working really hard to be very positive. And my first language is sarcasm. I was taught English as a second language. So,
Is this a
so
New England thing? Is this a Massachusetts thing?
it may be, I don't know, I think maybe sort of built into the cold weather, we're taught, everything is terrible.
Yep.
So I am really working hard on that. And and I don't even want to admit to this one because I probably won't do very well at it. I'm even going to kind of work on not swearing anymore. And I love to cuss. I love very colorful, flowerful language. But so I'm just going to start making up my own versions of things instead. So like, instead of son of a bitch, I'll be like, son of a tractor pull or something.
Tractor pull. That works well here in Reno. Yeah, Massachusetts. Yeah, there's the unique thing where just some of the best sports teams, well, more recently in history, yet they just everybody, this Red Sox suck, Patriots suck. Like okay. There's some like legitimate, teams in towns and sports towns in America where their teams like Jacksonville actually suck. You need to stop saying New England sports teams suck. There's my little rant. Just moved here from Jacksonville, so doing the dig at the Jaguars.
It's Jerry Seinfeld said 2 or more decades ago, I don't get why somebody's so super tied up to a particular team anymore anyway. He goes, we all basically just root for the laundry at this point.
It's true, we are rooting for
because everyone changes all the time. Everyone's at a different team all the time.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I mean, Tom Brady left the Patriots and I'm just like, yeah, I'm good with sports. I'm just yay sports, I don't care.
Go sports ball.
I never made a new decision after that. Like I was just like, I'm just gonna stop doing teams.
I do that. My favorite time to do that is if I'm in a group of people. I'm not especially into sports and I don't fault people who are.
Yeah.
But I love being sort of like secretly embedded in a group full of people who really love sports, because I'll yell things like, go guy with the ball. Run that thing over to that man over there, sports ball. And they'll like immediately realize that maybe I'm not their ally in this regard. But I honestly, at this point too, like I'm not embedded at any particular team. Like you said, Tom Brady left. Okay. And now I'll just sort of watch with that sort of, gee, who's playing the sports ball right now on this rectangle of glass? And that's all I'm doing. I don't care.
Yeah, you'd fit in like really, really well in the circus community. This is like a really strange thing to say to you because I know you like totally like identify with your inner aerialist, but literally like all the aerialists, all the circus people, like if I say something about a game or they just deer in the headlights, like they're like, they don't even know, like I say the name of the team and like, sports ball, what? So there's your inner aerialist, Chris.
I mean, I don't know a whole lot of famous circus people either. Peter Buffano is a orchestra guy. He did the band Circustra for some amount of time, and he was in the greater New England area making great circus music. Yeah. And his sister Lisa Buffano was a performer for a bunch of years. So there you go. I know 2 whole circus people. We interviewed
Andrea.
I'm not gonna remember his name. Kevin, what's his face? Who's Ringling Brothers' youngest ever ringmaster.
Oh yeah.
But that's it. That's all I got. There goes my circus knowledge right there.
Yeah, and you introduced me to a circus friend, Andrea, another backpack show.
Yes,
we are like such buddies now. So many reasons that I am so glad to know you, Chris.
Well, thank you.
I made a friend.
Business buddies, you said.
We are business buddies because you found me another circus freak, and you can never really have too many circus freaks in your life.
I've heard rumor that they shall inherit the earth. So yes. I'm going to believe it.
I think I read that somewhere. Yeah. So how do you want people to connect with you? There's all the ways. I mean, Twitter, you seem to be very accessible, and I'll put all the links that you want me to in the show notes, especially to your email newsletter. But how do you want people to connect with you, and why would they want to do so?
I think meaningfully. I would like for them to connect with me meaningfully. And if you bought a glycerin soap bar, the kind that you can like really see right through, and you put your message in the midst of it, I would read it. I would. But no, I mean, if you want to reach me, email's fine, chris@chrisbrogan.com, Twitter's fine, @ChrisBrogan. Anywhere you see me, except for like the men's room, feel free to say hi, because I'm super approachable and personable. I am an introvert, but I don't run away super fast because I'm fat. So like you've got it made. You can hunt me right down. And I think as far as why would you connect, I don't know. Like maybe I took your money, or maybe you want my predictions on the future, or maybe you want to know the other half of that weird joke about Darth Vader, a nun, and a scorpion walk into a bar.
So to recap what we've learned today, 3 is the best number. Don't move your head too much or else people will think you're stupid. And you can't have meaningful interactions in the men's room. Those are the 3 major things that we've learned today.
I will tell you a men's room story. So I was at TechCrunch, whatever it was called, some TechCrunch event, the first ever one. And my friend Chris Smith comes out of the bathroom and he goes, I just learned something super important. And I go, okay, because he's coming out of the bathroom. So this could, the answer after that sentence could be anything, right?
Yeah.
He goes, here's what I learned. He goes, so this, by the way, for ladies, maybe who aren't as skilled in men's rooms, I might be breaking some news to you. So he says, so I'm at the urinal and I watched this startup guy come in, go right to the urinal, pee and leave. And he didn't wash his hands. And he was like, ugh. And he goes, and then I watched this rich guy. He named the rich guy, but I won't say who. But he's like, this really rich guy walks in, washes his hands, then goes to the urinal, then washes his hands and leaves. And he goes, and of course, unless you're lying, you know what you do. You go to the urinal, you do your business, then you wash your hands.
Yeah.
He goes, but just what you missed is you just put your dirty hands on your business. You know why that guy is a super billionaire millionaire? Because he washes his hands before he touches his business. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm never going to forget this story.
This is awesome because I have something else. I have things in common with Adam Grant because of my grandfather thinking that way. And I've been obsessed with hand washing since I was a child. That's why I briefly went into nursing, which is like that's in my memoir, The Power of the Curve. Anybody wants to know why I randomly went into nursing, but I was like washing my hands so obsessively as a child, like 4 years old, just like every 10 minutes, that people would say to my mother, what is the matter with your daughter?
A good healthy dose of OCD.
Yeah, so I have things in common with billionaires. That's always a good sign, usually.
You could be rich now.
Yeah, give me the money. I wash my hands.
All right, now I have to give you one more bathroom story. Have you ever been to those like medieval manor or whatever, where you go and you eat like chickens with your bare hands and watch people joust and stuff? They have one in Boston. They have them in Florida, all over the place in Florida.
Yeah, I've seen them in Orlando. Yeah.
People in suits of armor, and they joust, and you eat like a crappy Cornish game hen with your hand, which to kids is the coolest thing that's ever happened in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
And your parents have to buy like a pewter mug for you that's like $40, so you can have your Coke or your Fanta orange in a pewter mug that you're never going to use again after this day, but whatever. So in the medieval manor in Boston, there was a king and all that sort of stuff. And so this guy stands up, one of the audience stands up in sort of the middle of part of one of the performances and gets ready to kind of like head over to the bathroom or whatever. And the king says, wait a minute, everybody stop what you're doing. So the music stops, everything stops. The king points at this person and the spotlight goes on this guy. And like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to the bathroom. Very like nervous, right?
Yeah.
And the king says, and you didn't think to ask my permission? And of course, what human is thinking this way, but he's like, oh, may I please go to the bathroom? You have my permission. Okay. So the music starts and blah, 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 and all this stuff starts going. And the guy comes back to the table and the king again stops everything. He says, you're back from the bathroom? He goes, yes. He goes, well, did you wash your hands? And the guy says, yeah, of course. The king says, oh yeah? What color was the soap? And the guy freezes.
Oh my God.
Ever since that story, which when I was 11 years old, when I saw this, I obsessively know the color of the soap in the place I just used the bathroom
Okay, yeah.
for however long until it fades out of my head, but it'll be like, pink, like that school soap, you know? And I have imbued that in other humans who now wander around thinking to themselves, that was white soap.
Well, now thanks for
Sorry,
putting that.
Christine. This
Thanks
is
for
how we
putting,
do the show.
thanks for putting that thought into my head, because now I'm never going to not notice soap colors ever again.
Just in case a king stops you
You
and
just
queries you.
never know. I was looking at my phone. See, I put the I can't tell with the glare. My 3 words are that was Carrie's idea. Thought it was a really cool idea.
It's very smart.
My wallpaper. Well, thank you so much today for being on the show today, Chris. We could talk for hours. This is awesome.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for such a long and in-depth interview. I feel like we went places together.
I think so too. Very cool. And thank you all for joining me here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. And be sure and drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourself. Just 7,000 reasons to check the show notes today. Thank you all. And until tomorrow, happy writing.